Modern universities produce the world's most advanced research on how the human brain actually works. Yet, when it comes to teaching their own students, these same institutions rely on instructional methods engineered centuries before we understood cognitive biology. The human brain is highly plastic, constantly remodeling itself based on active engagement and stress. But the traditional university lecture is completely passive, designed for a one-way flow of information from an expert to a silent room. You can see this inefficiency built directly into the architecture. These tiered halls are constructed for a single transmitter broadcasting to hundreds of isolated receivers, guaranteeing most of the data never actually sticks. A century ago, psychologist Lev Vygotsky argued against this isolation. He proposed that cognitive development does not happen quietly in a vacuum. Instead, he observed that learning requires an active social environment. When individuals are forced to interact, negotiate, and collaborate with peers, they internalize complex concepts far better than they do alone. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory was long categorized as a psychological philosophy. However, recent developments in imaging and cognitive science are beginning to map his observations onto the physical structures of the human brain. To understand exactly how Vygotsky's theories map onto human biology, researchers have had to break down the walls separating laboratory neuroscience from classroom pedagogy. This pie chart illustrates recent academic literature analyzing this intersection. Research originates mostly in the social sciences, making up nearly half of publications. Right next to it, psychology holds a crucial 19% share. These two wedges are working together to measure social learning. This overlap has created a distinct academic discipline known as neuroeducation. By looking at their data, we can trace the exact mechanics of learning. We will follow the process starting at the cellular level, moving up into the classroom environment, and ending at the rigid policies of the university itself. Because if we want to fix the macro failures of higher education, instructional designers must first map the biological engine inside the student. Learning, at its literal biological level, is neuroplasticity. It is the physical strengthening of synaptic connections and new neural pathways to store information. But this cellular rewiring is not a purely intellectual function. It is strictly gated by the brain's emotional center, the limbic system. When a student experiences positive emotional states, driven by a compelling narrative or high motivation, the limbic system acts as a catalyst. These triggers release neurotransmitters that actively widen data pathways, driving information into the prefrontal cortex, where it solidifies into long-term memory. Place that same student in a passive, emotionless lecture hall, and the limbic system restricts that flow. The data simply bounces off the working memory and is discarded before reaching long-term storage. Emotional engagement functions as a gateway for memory. By activating the limbic system, instructors ensure information triggers the structural changes required for long-term retention. If a single brain requires emotional engagement to store data, we have to scale that requirement up to a social network. This is where Vygotsky's model of peer-to-peer meaning construction becomes vital. Social negotiation forces a student to articulate a complex idea, defend it, and adapt to feedback in real time. This peer interaction pushes the brain into a state of high cognitive arousal. Instead of viewing a classroom as a grid of isolated individuals, we must view it as an active biological network. Neuroimaging confirms collaborative problem-solving stimulates broader areas of the cortex. When students connect, their individual neural firing rates spike. We see this physical reality when students actively lean in to negotiate over shared materials. They are constructing a shared mental model through dialogue. Peer interaction provides the exact emotional and cognitive catalyst the limbic system demands. Modern scans provide the clear empirical proof that Vygotsky's sociocultural theory is the optimal way the brain acquires knowledge. Recognizing these biological requirements forces a complete redesign of our instructional environments, especially in digital spaces. This leads to the development of the virtual learning environment, or VLA. These platforms are uniquely capable of structuring social and biological interaction at an institutional scale. A well-engineered digital environment maps directly onto cognitive networks. Features like interactive forums mirror the neural connections forming in students' brains. Asynchronous spaces accommodate diverse processing speeds. By letting students engage at their own pace, the system reduces limbic stress and increases autonomy. This autonomous problem-solving allows students to build complex internal mental models without relying on forceful external instruction to snap the pieces into place. To achieve this, the traditional role of the university professor has to change. They must transition from a transmitter of rigid facts into a cognitive facilitator who designs and manages these active environments. The physical manifestation of this looks entirely decentralized. Students operate independently at their own stations, yet remain highly engaged within a meticulously structured, neuro-optimized system. By providing these structured spaces for autonomy and peer interaction, well-designed environments essentially automate neuroplasticity. If the biological blueprint for optimal learning is fully mapped and proven, we are left with a massive dilemma. Why do the vast majority of universities fail to implement it? The bottleneck is structural. There is a severe deficit in teacher training programs across higher education. University instructors are hired because they are subject matter experts. They are rarely provided with continuing education in neuroscientific methodology, leaving these powerful insights completely blocked from reaching the classroom. This training deficit originates at the administrative level. Curriculum and faculty policies are decided in committee rooms, entirely isolated from the findings of cognitive science. The result is widespread institutional resistance. Instructors cling to traditional passive lectures simply because they are denied practical tools, training, and the time required to operationalize neuroeducation. This resistance stems from a failure in institutional resource allocation. Theoretical research and student potential are present, but instructors lack the bureaucratic support required to operationalize these insights. Universities must execute a severe institutional pivot. They must stop treating pedagogy as a traditional art and start treating it as an applied biological science. Institutions need to invest directly in continuous professional development that bridges raw neurological theory with actionable classroom design. Empowering educators with this biological awareness drastically reduces instructional friction. It allows them to step back and naturally increase student autonomy. Preparing students to solve complex modern challenges requires building environments that actually match the reality of human cognitive architecture. True university evolution depends on the educator's understanding of cognitive biology. Adopting a teaching model that matches the human brain is the essential next step for higher education.